Welcome to the Blackout Show, presented by the Guillen Grid, a show about the Chicago White Sox baseball, the good, the bad, the ugly. We'll debate what's working and what's not on the south side of Chicago. It's old school versus new school baseball. And most importantly, we're keeping all the receipts.
Welcome into another edition of the Blackout Show. I'm Slavko Bekovic, joined by Ozzie Guillen Jr. and our boy Jay. Jay, you're muted. Now you're not. There we go. Welcome to the show. The White Sox lost another game today. Nothing really surprising there. They fall to 7-21. Jay, just before we started, you said it feels a little bit different. They almost won a game though.
We almost won a game today.
If this was hockey, they would have gotten a point out of it.
This close, but. Yeah, I got to apologize to my manager because when he got hired, I was a little bit upset because he wasn't the guy that I handpicked, my agenda. But it is a different team than last year. And I do feel like even though, statistically somehow we're worse, but the eye test, these guys are competing for 9, even 10 innings. Sometimes you got to go 10 innings. We came up short today, but I was pleased with the product that was on the field in Sacramento this weekend. So, all in all, got to tip my cap to Will Venable because it looks like the team is headed at least in a better direction, and we know for a fact that the loss column is because of talent, not because of guys, being lethargic or what have you. So,
Junior, we were talking before you logged in. They're still on pace to lose 120 games. Now, the good news is the Rockies actually have a worse record. And they're on pace to beat the White Sox record for last year. For now, they're at 4-23. Sox are 7-21, 250 winning percentage. So they're on pace to win 40 or 41 games, which is pretty much right where they were at last year. But like you said, Jay, this feels different. There's at least something to look forward to. Junior, what's your perspective of at least the product on the field despite the record?
It's ugly. It's ugly.
They can't hit for shit.
I think that the reason that the perception is that it's better is because you don't want to punch Will in the face. He doesn't oversell the team. These guys have not been around for a long time, so you're not beating a dead horse because the mindset of the White Sox fan is that they had so much talent in the last group, which in reality is not true. They didn't have any talent. Who's doing good in another team? Right. So I think that's why the perception. I think that the big surprise for them has been a couple of the arms. So I would think that the way that I look at it is that it is a little bit better because from at least an arm standpoint, you see guys that have done a little bit better, have competed a little bit better. But from the production side, there's a couple players that are still part of the roster, mainly Andrew Vaughn and Luis Robert, that were part of the old regime, okay, where the storyline is the same. Guys that were supposed to have all this talent and were sold that they were going to be amazing, kind of like you look at them and you're like, wow, these guys are going to be really good baseball players because they were good baseball players in other levels, but they're not very good at the Major League Baseball level. And it's kind of like the same storyline with guys that were here before. So that's where I'm at. I think that they should be, 5 more wins better than they are right now, like 5-21, 13-21, I would say. But I think that, to be honest, man, I think that the 7 wins that they've gotten with the little talent that they have, when you look at some of the production, like first base and DH, which is like a big offensive production, less than 12 RBIs,
We're
guys getting nothing out of those positions. So the fact that guys like the new catcher they brought up, kind of like the little fill-in guys, the 7 wins have been huge for them in the sense that I think that this team talent-wise, when you're looking at the guys on paper, the 7 wins is a lot. So Will Venable is working with very little. And I think this has been the best we've ever seen the pitching coach, to be honest, with the staff that he's gotten. Because, again, it's not a lot of big-name guys. Before he had C's, which was the seasons that he had him was either a top 5 Cy Young guy or the year that he finished second, but he was a top 10 pitcher in the big leagues. He had a couple years of Giolito, where they were like average, and then last year he had Crochet, the next coming. So I think the 7 wins for them as a staff, because when you look at the talent, man, it's worrisome. Again, I know that they're being futuristic, but there's a lot of positions where you're like, okay, who are the dudes? Like, where are these dudes at? There's a couple fill-in players that are going to be good. Like again, you have to have 9 positions, but I don't see a dude. I don't see a dude where I'm like, that guy's an all-star for the next 10 years and a super baseball player.
Well, Quero's a Hall of Famer, so I mean that's one right there.
The difference is that at least we're giving the I hate that I just did that to myself. I hate saying we. Yuck. At least they're giving younger players an opportunity, right? So that's all White Sox fans wanted to see, right? That's basically what this season is for. Give Edgar Quero a chance. Kyle Teal eventually will get a chance. Honestly, with what Andrew Vaughn is doing, or I guess what he's not doing, and then what you see Tim Elko doing in AAA at age 26, he probably deserves a chance too. Whether or not he's a dude, we don't know, but you'll never know if you don't give him an opportunity, because what they have out there on the field right now isn't getting the job done offensively. Luis Robert still, honestly, Edgar Quero's statistics by far, granted it's a smaller sample size, but he is the best hitter on the team, and he just got here a week ago. I was at his debut, and my favorite thing about what we're seeing from him, at least, is that he's not trying to do too much, but he's still come up clutch with a few nice hits here and there with runners in scoring position. Did it against Boston. He just kind of takes what the pitcher gives you. If he's going to throw it down and away, as a lefty, he's just going to slap it in the left field. Like he's shooting the gaps. He's just getting on base. He's drawing walks. A hit and a walk again today against the A's. Granted, it's not like they're playing, incredible competition, although, Crochet has shut them down a couple times. They can't hit as a whole. But to see him get plate appearance after plate appearance, good quality at bats, making solid contact, you'd like to see eventually some more power. But for a guy who's only been in the big leagues for like 10 days, it's at least somewhat encouraging to see what he's been able to do so far.
Now, I just want to go back to yesterday with what the boys did against Jeffrey Springs. Like, Springs has a really good changeup. So you got to be on your A game. You got to be back. You can't be too anxious. Like, there weren't many singles against Springs. We literally doubled him out of the game. Everything was to right field. Even Brooks Baldwin going, hanging in there to where he could shoot a 2-run double to the right side. Like that, these guys are going up there with an approach and a plan. Like that's at least I could ask for that as a casual fan wanting improvements on the field. Now, granted, we just talked about how the offense is still historically bad, but you can still have productive outs. You can still keep the ball in front of you, keep the double play in order for your guys like Shane Smith and Davis Martin, so they could be a ground ball away getting out of the inning. Look at what that did for Cannon too, because it wasn't like he was just cruising by. He had a lot of traffic from Oakland too, but he was able to skate by because not only did we just keep the lead, but we kept the ball in front of us too. And you're starting to see that. Like last year with Grafal, everything that can save a bad team or keep a bad team competitive was out the window. We had guys not checking outfielders. Like your secondary lead was fucking non-competitive. Like runners in scoring position, you could forget about it. Like this at least this year, we got guys going to war. Like Quero's going to war. Joshua Palacios led off the game with a bomb. Like this was a guy that
he doesn't need to be in the big leagues.
Not at all.
I don't need to see Joshua.
By the way, Palacios been a big surprise, and this is where I'm trying to get the gauge of it because
he was better than Nomar Mazara already.
No, but the part that's promising is when you see a young guy like Quero come up and Chase, the shortstop, it have been the two kind of offensive guys that came really from the minor league system,
Right.
and they're coming to the big leagues, and in less than 60 at bats, you're seeing at least like average numbers in the big leagues. Like they don't look outmatched. You're thinking, okay, with less than 60 at bats, these guys are going to develop better. You know, they're not completely outmatched, and that's something that you're like, wow, okay, whatever they're doing in the minor leagues seems to be more promising from previous years. That's why Alco at this point seems so exciting and sexy, because you're like, wait, maybe whatever they're working with down there is actually working out. And again, when you're in the minor league level, you probably practice more and develop more on day to day than you do at the big league level. Again, the Sox should probably be developing as much as they can at the big league level, because they're not all veterans. But the problem is that the guys that should know better, Pantera and Andrew, this is not their second year in the big leagues. They've already had,
4
a couple
years.
seasons under their belts, and they're approaching, as I would think, Quero and those guys were taking approaches of being outmatched. So that's the part where development wise, the younger players are like, okay, they're developing right on pace. So like, let's say we took away the wins and the losses, and we're like, where does everyone have to be developing, including Venable as a manager? Because Will's like his first in the big leagues. The guys that are like younger in the big leagues, their development is actually where it needs to be. The guys that have been there for a while, those are the guys that are concerning of, hey, do we need to sit down Andrew Vaughn and give him some, give Elko some playing time and try to mix Andrew, like maybe in the outfield. Like Andrew has not the problem that I have right now is that you have two guys in positions that it's not like, it's not like two guys that are like perennial MVPs that, are Hall of Fame players where you can't sit down because they've done so much for the organization. So I don't know why we can't bench them, why we can't send them down, why we can't send a message of a wake-up call. You know what? I admire both guys, because if it was me personally, I would have faked an injury already, just to give myself some resting time, because the at-bats are gaining up on them. And again, I think the energy level, the way that they play, they don't get beat like last year. It felt like they just got slapped around by everybody. At least the games are competitive, and you're like, wow, they were one pitcher away, or one big base hit away from being competitive. So that's why I think that you got to look at it from a more promising standpoint and not really look at the 120. And again, if I'm going to lose 120 games, I'd rather lose 120 game developing players.
Yes.
Polson, Quero, because of like, they're going to be here in the future. I don't want to lose 120 games with guys that are not going to be here in 2 or 3 years. I guess I look at it losing 120 games in two different ways. I can lose 120 games while developing, or losing 120 games with guys that don't deserve to be here, meaning they're not going to be here in the future.
That's the difference between this year and last year. Last year's roster, like, you wanted to get rid of everybody. And because they didn't trade Luis Robert, that's pretty much the only guy left. Like Vaughn, he has zero value. He has negative value at this point. He's hitting 157. Luis Robert's hitting 152, but at least I think he's leading American League at 10 steals. Miguel Vargas, that's the guy to me. He's so frustrating because he's got that 100-point gap between the OBP and the average. If he could just hit 240, he would actually be a pretty valuable asset. He made a nice play at third base today. He was leading off to start the year. Now he's batting ninth, but he's still getting on at a nearly 300, on base percentage, and he's hitting $194. So if he could just get a couple more hits here and there, the difference between last year's roster and this year's roster, like you said, Junior, is that you're at least seeing guys that you want to see, young guys who either you're going to find out if they can sink, or if they can swim, or if they'll sink, or they're guys that you think you might be building around, like a Quero, like a Mydroth. Eventually, Teal will be here. To me, like you said, I think you hit the nail on the head with Vaughn. If you really, really still want to get him at bats, he can DH. He played left field when the team was good, or when they were supposed to be good. Why are you afraid to put him there now?
Yeah.
You're going to lose 120 games again. Like, what's the point? You owe Andrew Vaughn absolutely nothing. Mm-hmm. And if you still feel like maybe there's something there, you can find a way to keep him in the lineup by pulling somebody else out. I don't see why Tim Elko hasn't gotten a chance yet. Ralph Daniels, Baldwin, he's been playing well. It's a good comment by him. But to the question of like when is Elko coming, it should be sooner than later. What do they have to lose?
Yeah.
And one person, sorry, Jay, one person you mentioned, Palacios, the guy that I'm because of the age and again development. I don't know what Oscar Colas did to somebody, in that sense, because again, he's a young player, where you're getting those at bats and kind of seeing what's there, and kind of like just where the value's at. But again, like even with Vargas' struggles, he's young enough and he hasn't had the big league experience enough where I'm like, okay, just throw him out there because there are things that he's doing that are getting better. Like number one is defense. He's playing third base way better than I thought that he would be. And he's doing things, in different aspects of his games that are showing some improvement. So that's the part where I think that in the building of the lineup and for Will, it's challenging. But again, there's a couple guys in the roster. You're like, hey, maybe we should give somebody else in the minor league system a shot. If somebody's not, and why not do it now? Like we had guys playing out of position, okay, when the team was supposed to be good. So why not do it now where, again, you're basically just competing against yourself. And I still don't think that they're going to break the record. I really think that they're not going to lose 120 games. I'm still positive about that.
I agree with you there. Jay, I know you like Brooks Baldwin. What do you think, like, do you think we know what his ceiling is yet? Or do you still want to just see him continue to get at bats?
I do think we kind of see where he is. The Rays got a player named Taylor Walls who's pretty similar to Brooks Baldwin. I think Brooke got a little bit more a higher ceiling with the bat, but his OPS right now is 713. That is just he only
It's like second on the team.
Yeah, but
that's pretty good on this roster.
If Brooks Baldwin, the type of athleticism he has, if he could get that OPS around at least 750, 770, he can score the mystery runs that this team needs to stay away from losing 120 games. And let's talk about Elko for a second, because I can guarantee you this entire fan base will be lining the fucking rate as soon as they hear Elko is getting a call, because everybody has watched this man absolutely destroy the minor leagues. It's going on 2 weeks now of Elko. He's just hitting straight bombs. It's just Nuketown. There's nothing.
His OPS is almost 1,200.
There's no singles. There's no walks. It's just all bombs, Slavko.
I mean, he's gotten a few walks. His on base percentage 430. He's hitting 354. Like if he wasn't 26, and
I don't care. At this point, think about this. He's at the age to where you'll probably know who Tim Elko is almost immediately, just because he's in that range of where we're gonna figure out where he's mature as a hitter. At the end of the day, this offense could use a shot like that because he's just pure slug.
I think if he was under 25, you'd be looking at someone who's probably on a top 100 prospect list somewhere.
Oh, for sure.
And if he was a lefty bat, he'd be in the lineup every damn day. I can promise you that.
And you know what's interesting that you just mentioned that, Sock? I also ride, and again, this is not something that you can measure by statistics, and I know that the world now is all sabermetrics, but confidence goes a long way, okay? And when players click and they get that confidence, I would try to ride that out if I was the White Sox and try to kind of catch lightning in a bottle. Mm-hmm. Because let's be honest, if Elko hits, meaning he becomes a guy that can fill a hole in, then Andrew Vaughn not making it does not look as drastic, okay? If you can have guys in certain, because when you have the prospects, let's say your top picks don't make it. I'll give you a perfect example. Mark Burley in his draft class, okay? They drafted probably like 25 guys before Mark that were supposed to be better than Mark, okay? That were supposed to be, 10-year career veterans with the franchise.
Better stuff, better college stats, all that, yeah.
Better everything. But by Mark being able to make it, all those 25 guys, we don't talk about them today because nobody cared that they missed on them because it's not a big deal. When you start caring about guys being bust is because there was no one behind them. There was no one else that you could develop to kind of cover that up. Because if you go look and look at guys that make it, they're usually not the top pick, especially in White Sox history, like Creedy. Like they're never like the number one pick. Like that number one pick for Chicago, other than like Sale, Crochet, they really haven't had like a huge impact But that, as a GM, that's why when you do the draft, that's why great GMs and great franchises, I should say, because it takes the whole team, you have that middle of the road draft pick where you can develop guys. And that's where guys like Quero, looked promising. Chase, because they're not top picks. They're not, because again, and that's how you fill in a roster. So like Brooks Baldwin, for me, when I'm looking at Brooks Baldwin at his age, the amount of games that he's played, and he's like on, even though the offense is not great, but he's like on the top 5 categories of offensively. You're like, okay, cool. Like this is a guy that I think it's funny because no one's making excuses for him playing out of position. Okay, if what was
he plays 12 positions.
No, hold on, but that's not his main position. Just because he can do it, we said that Andrew Vaughn did not hit for 2 years because he was in the outfield, and
some people said that.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Some people said that.
He's not on the show today.
Others had a break.
Though, we made I'm saying though we made huge excuses like, oh, Andrew's not hitting, but here's Brooks Baldwin, where he's not playing his natural position and he's making the most of it. So I think it's promising because he's a guy that right now it gives you flexibility of moving around in the lineup. I know that Will's probably very excited about having him there. And he's not going to be a guy that's going to be an MVP candidate, not right now, but he is, when you're looking at wins above replacement and kind of like that above average big league player. And he's probably one of the only guys on the roster where I'm like, hey, this guy could probably be on other big league teams. So I like how he's developing. I like the way that he approaches the play. I like that he's not making excuses of where he hits in the lineup, of where he plays in the lineup. He just goes out. And again, I think that the factor of Quero, Chase, and Brooks have one thing in common. They compete for every at bat. They grind it out. They don't give outs out. They find a way to compete. And sometimes at the big league level, that takes you further than talent. Some guys are born with limited talent, but if you get the most out of that limited talent, you're gonna have yourself a really nice big league career. And again, when you find greatness is when you have talent and you have guys that grind it out like that. But again, a weekend where Oakland's not the best team, but it's a pretty competitive team. They competed. And I think the longer that they play together, we're going to see a better White Sox team than the record is showing.
Let's just quickly touch on the pitching staff. I mean, there's really nothing other than Gonzo's boy Leisure in the bullpen. There's really not a ton to hope for, I guess, from the future. But to their credit, a lot of these guys are, just trying to find a spot in the major leagues, and they're doing pretty damn well overall. Part of the reason last year was so frustrating and devastating was all those blown leads, especially April, May, June. The bullpen came in and it was like you knew the game was over. That's not the case this year. But to your point, Junior, like you mentioned earlier, I mean, Ethan Katz, what he's done with Cannon, with Davis Martin, who pitched 6 strong innings today. Shane Smith, I think at this point, we can give the White Sox scouting department a high five for that find. I mean, that's pretty damn impressive what he's been able to do. I hope he's going to be able to keep it up. I hope he's able to kind of stretch himself out a little bit more. What an incredible find. If he's someone that you staple or I guess pencil into this rotation for the next 10 years, that whether he's your number 2 or he's your number 5, like that's a huge, huge find out of left field to pick him up in the Rule 5 draft. Nasty changeup. His velocity is higher than I expected, I guess. And every time I see him, I'm just like, okay, like, you kind of forget because of that changeup. He's got a little heat on the fastball too. At least again, just like we have, with Quero, Baldwin, and I guess to an extent Vargas on the pitching side of things in the rotation, 4 out of 5 days, you have a pretty good feeling like, all right, here's a young guy who might carve out some sort of major league career for himself. My question is like, what do we think of Sean Burke? Because I think everybody was super high on him after opening day, and he's come down back to reality a little bit. He's still got some potential. Hardworking guy, seems to be a good kid, but he doesn't really find himself in these conversations like Smith or Cannon or Martin like we did earlier in the year.
I think for Burke, he was promising. His ERA, obviously, when you look at the number, it's high because he's had a couple outings where he's gotten hit around and he has to stay in as a starter. 5 starts, 27 innings, so the inning consumption has not been low. So he's competed in there. His walk to strikeout ratio, 11-20. I like it. The average again is the highest average of any starter with the White Sox. He's got to find a way, and he's gonna get I'm okay with him being on the staff this year. I know that everyone plays fantasy baseball in their heads and they make rotations where there's Schultz and this guy's 1, 2, 3, 4, and they got guys. We don't know yet, because Shane could have a bad month, Cannon can have a bad month, Martin can have a bad month. I want to see Sean go out there and compete for a full season because he's shown flares of being great, meaning that he can compete at the big league level and a pitching coach that, I wasn't very high on in the sense that, he was made out to be this great genius. And, we saw flares of greatness, but then at times when we were second guessing him, this has been his year. He's been able to work with these young guys. And I really want to see what Berg can do for a full season because you need starting pitching. Martin Perez goes down. He's probably not going to pitch the rest of the year. So all these guys the Sox are going to go with a lot of young arms, and that's what we wanted. And as a fan base, and I think Burke just goes out there and gets thrown out and see what it does. This is, when you get to the big leagues, I think Sean Burke is a guy that has already been able to pitch in AAA. Okay. And if you put him back in AAA, he's going to do great. And right now he's trying to figure out what kind of player he's going to be in the big leagues. And that usually takes, 5 years in the longevity, like at the high end, a year or two in the short end. Do you go to the bullpen? Are you a starter? Or are you a guy that's going to end up playing in Mexico or, Japan or Korea, winter ball in the other side? So like right now, this is like when you're in your career and this is his moment to be able to prove himself and say, are my next 10 years going to be at the Major League Baseball level? Or am I going to be a guy that, was talented enough, which is more than 99% of the world, to be able to play at a AAA level and dominate, but never was a big league pitcher? And this is a perfect team for him to do it. And you know what? When you see guys like Sean Burke, he's very fortunate to be on the White Sox, that the White Sox have this kind of opportunity to play with him because, you see guys like Tristan McKenzie got released. Guys that are like higher ceilings, maybe younger, other teams releasing guys that are kind of like in a competitive window. So with Burke, as long as there's nobody else that he's blocking a spot for, you throw him out there and see what you get. Because I think that, with the 2 months, I would like to see him getting at least 15 starts to kind of, give up on him because, again, he had flair. So, and I like the inning consumption that he's been able to throw innings. He's not a guy out there that's throwing one inning and getting shelled and you're like, oh, this guy can't even go out there for at least 4 or 5. So I want to see what he has left, for the rest of the season.
Jay, what do you think about the rotation?
I'm okay with it. I'm okay. Like Burke's whip right now is a 1.4, but that's only because there'll be some like second and third innings to where the base runners lump up on him, and it happens. Like he's not missing as many bats as a guy with his stuff normally would. OJ, you hit it right on the head. He has to feel his way through because you're healthy. You're in a situation to where you're just gonna have to be more competitive, like stay locked in because there are some counts to where he'll have a guy 0-2 and it'll somehow, some way turn into a 7-pitch at bat. Like those are unnecessary pitches to where now he's laboring and you've only given up technically 1 earned run. But you're laboring. He just has to stay away from that. I'm okay with the rotation as a whole. We seen Davis Martin today in the bulk role really kind of shut the A's down. 6 innings, 6 Ks. He had a couple walks, but I mean, nothing really happened. The White Sox pitching, to you guys' point, haven't been the issue. It's just the fact of the matter is we can't hold this team accountable for more than 2.5 runs. So
do you guys think it's a philosophical thing with Venable, or is it more so just the fact that these are a lot of young guys who aren't going deep into ball games, but he's not really giving these guys an opportunity to see the lineup the third time through? Like 2 times through the order seems to be like the cutoff, unless the guy is just really dealing. And I'm curious, like, I wonder if Venable's been asked that, or if that's something that just he imparts philosophically. But he's also, it's still April. These are young pitchers, a very inexperienced rotation outside of Perez, who's obviously on the shelf now. But I'm curious if this is something that Venable will kind of ease up on as he maybe gains some trust with a guy like Burke or Shane Smith.
I think that it's more of like, so this is a lot of these guys is our first years in the big leagues.
Right.
So when guys are like, oh, he's got to develop him to go in the, and I was debating this with Ozzy, like, oh, he's got to help, Ozzy thought that he needs to let them go a little bit longer and kind of learn.
Because that was his style as a skipper. Like
Yes.
Garland never saw the third time through the order till Ozzy took over.
Correct. But so my debate against Ozzy, and this is where we were different, was when Ozzy took over the team, Garland was like 4th year in the big leagues. And it was like he had learned enough. And then the problem was that the manager before Ozzy wouldn't really give him that opportunity. But he had built himself up to the point where if he blew the game, Garland wasn't going to be, his ego wasn't going to be hurt, or, his morale. I think that right now with this young staff, they're trying to get them out of the game with a positive of like getting them to feel good, especially if the game is not like in a winnable situation. I think once we probably hit the All-Star break, depending on how they're doing in the inning consumption, I can see Will trying to go deeper.
Yeah.
I also think that he has a lot of fresh arms in the bullpen where he's like, let me see what these guys can do. And it hasn't happened as much as, he hasn't had like a guy in a 60 pitch game, with a 5-run lead and him coming out and pulling him out in the 4th, which was kind of different. Like I used to argue it when Grifol used to do it to like Cease, or like we had guys on our staff that were going for Cy Youngs and we were pulling out of games where those guys need to go deep just because of the type of pitchers are. So I think that it's not a will. I think it's more of a development standpoint. I think one crazy stat, and it's really funny how Will can manage that, is that the White Sox have only had 4 save opportunities and they've converted it only in 1, but they've only had 4 save opportunities, which is not a lot. Usually, you would think that we were blowing more games in the 9th. So, I think later on, I think that's why I think the team won't lose 120 games, because we might see the guys might be able to go a little bit longer in that stretch as their arms, I get a lot fresher. And that's why I think that my biggest positive on this young staff is the amount of innings they've been able to consume so far in the season, which was such a big problem last year, where your number 1 ace was a guy that was in a limited pitch count. So that was a problem. And then the guys that were trying to kind of establish themselves, they wouldn't go deep into games. So this staff, regardless if you think they've gotten shelled or not, they've been able to average at least 5 innings for the most part. So I think it's more of a development standpoint. And I can't say Will's just pulling them out. Again, there's an analytical aspect of it. And maybe as these guys learn the league, for these pitchers, they're facing these guys for the first time. I always think that when pitchers, get to be around a little bit longer, they get better. We used to, I remember the first year of the White Sox, when Ozzy took over, there was a young pitcher named Justin Verlander. And we used to light that guy up. And he was like, if Justin was on, the White Sox were just going to have a field day against him. And within 2 years, by the second year that we saw him, 3rd year, he was like unhittable, because he had, learned the league, learned the Sox. And again, then he became a problem. So I think from a development standpoint, again, I think that that's a part where the big positive of the light in the organization has been with these young arms. What I don't like is we develop good pitchers, so we're just going to trade everybody so that we can build our position players. I think that the way that we should look at it is we should get better at developing hitters as well as pitchers, because again, in this day and age, guys are going to go down with injuries. That's just the name of the game. And again, right now they have a nice little crop of pitchers, and hopefully they keep throwing the ball the way they've been doing, because that way they can win more games.
I just want to say it's going to be hard to see the lineup the 3rd time over when you're at 70 pitches through 4 2/3. I feel like Will knows where the finish line is with each guy, because like Cannon's last start in Detroit was extremely frustrating because he didn't finish anybody off, and the point to where he let foul balls drag his pitch count up. That's the problem with Sean Burke right now. Those pitches that are supposed to be those A+ wipeout pitches are getting spoiled and fouled off. And now you got to throw another pitch. And now the inning is hanging by another thread. Instead of just walking your ass back to the dugout, you're in a 10-pitch battle with Zach McKinstry of all people. So
hey, he's got like a 1.5 WAR. I got a couple.
Yeah, he's a pretty good player. But Slop, you know what's really impressive with this is that none of the guys on the mound right now in the starting staff are like lights out. Like nobody's up there like 99. Yeah. So the fact that they're running
up in 97.
Yeah, but like the fact that they're pitching, like these guys are like actually going out there and like pitching. like relying on like off speed and change up and your second pitch, and they're using their fastball for location. When you're competing at that level in Major League Baseball, and you're basically competing with average stuff, it's impressive because you have to be on your pitches every day. When you're a guy that throws 99 plus, you can get away with making mistakes, and you're going to put people away in the league a lot easier. So I think for these guys, I think that, again, with scouting reports and being able to pitch better, because I don't see any guy on the staff, I don't see him as like a strikeout machine, like a Crochet. Like Crochet saves himself 30 pitches just because, if you're looking for an off speed and he goes fastball, you're done. Like you just got beat. You're king. Like a guy like, future wise, Noah Schultz. Noah Schultz could probably come to the big leagues right now today, come out of the bullpen, and you'll be like, oh God, wow, this guy's, because the God-given talent is that much higher. So the fact that these guys are all just like your average pitcher competing, pitch to contact. So I think that once, those little innings, and that's why baseball is so peculiar when it comes to that, like little innings, a walk less, you walk one less batter, that might be 15 pitches less in a start. Those are little twitches that you make that I think come with experience. And that's where working with your staff, and that's where you don't look at the win and loss record. You have to kind of see an improvement in every start, and that's what you look at. And again, I don't see this offense being like, oh, it's cold, these guys are going to figure it out. Like, it's just they're going through a phase. I just don't see the talent. With the pitching, you're like, there's talent. So if you pitch well and catch the ball well, you're eventually going to be in more games that can go your way, which was a problem, I think, last year, was that there was no pitching, even though the offense looked better. But if you don't stop guys from scoring, you're not going to win games. You're just not, because offensively, you're going to have a day or two where your bats kind of light up, but you need pitching to stay in games. And we've seen it. We've seen it with Cleveland. We've seen it with smaller budget teams where pitching has kept them in seasons. It's been the pitching. They've been horrible offensively or below average, and they've been able to compete. So again, there's a lot of really good hitting teams right now around the league that wish they had the White Sox pitching. You put that White Sox pitching staff on some other offenses, and you have a really good team. Yeah. So I think that's improved, as well as the defensive end. So I think that's the promising part. Again, I got to give credit to the pitching staff and the manager and that staff, because that part has improved a lot.
All right, Jay, I'm going to put you on the spot. Braden Montgomery got promoted to high A. He was hitting like 3-something, had some pop. He's pretty much done it all. He made it look fairly easy. 2027, opening day, who are the top 3 hitters in the White Sox lineup?
Chase my draw, Braden Montgomery. And you know what? I'm going to be honest with you. It's got to be Quero. It's got to be Quero.
That is Ozzy's point. Exactly what he said earlier about there's not that dude yet. Mm-hmm. You can go my draw and go like, okay, yeah, like he gets on base, good at bats. I like that. Montgomery, okay, you can see the ceiling as a 2-hitter, but then who's your guy? They just don't have that yet, not offensively. And Colson Montgomery looks further and further from that guy.
That's not the Montgomery we talk about these days. So
right.
Go, unfortunately.
Yeah. It's BC, not BM, not CM anymore. All right. So last thing before we get out of here, picks to click. Oh, by the way, I looked it up, Junior, because you were. I was curious. Mark Burley, the year he was drafted. Do you remember who was their first round pick?
I have no idea.
He had a nice career in the major leagues, but never ever the guy that people thought he might be. Right-handed pitcher. They traded him after 2 years.
No, it couldn't have been Billy.
The Pirates.
What was that?
They traded him to the Pirates.
No, you got me there.
Jay, you know it.
Traded him to the Pirates. Who?
Kip Wells.
Ooh.
Kip Wells. Oh,
yeah, first round pick. I think he was Baylor. Had a nice career. He made 220 starts, made some money. But to your point, his career pales in comparison to what Mark Burley did. All right, last thing before we go, picks to click. Apparently, allegedly, Gonzo, who is texting us as we're doing the show, so apparently he can text, but he can't do the show, He claims that he won picks to click last year. I call bullshit. He wanted to make the first pick, but he's not here, so I'm not going to allow him to do that. So, Jay, you get the first pick.
Oh, you know what? You're going to stop shitting on my first baseman. Give me Andrew Vaughn.
Okay. Who did you guys assign me last show because I had a sinus infection?
Did you have my draft?
I don't know. He didn't even put it on there. He just said he got picks to click with Baldwin. Jay had Vargas and OJ had my draw. So, like, did I not even get one? Oh, look at this motherfucker. He's commenting on the show, but he can't do the goddamn show.
Pedro
Gonzo, you don't get Quero. You get the last pick. Jay's got Vaughn. Junior, you're next.
I'm going to go with Lenny Sosa.
Oh. Okay. I'm taking Quero because screw you, Gonzo. And we're gonna give him how do I get nobody when I miss a show and he misses a show and he gets the first pick? What is this bullshit? You got nobody. Screw you, Gonzo. And the fact that he's texting us and commenting instead of doing the show.
He get us on both engines.
Who should we give him? We'll make this a collective pick.
Joshua Palacios.
Deal. Okay. All right. So Jay's got Vaughn, OJ's got Sosa, I got Quero, Palacios, Gonzo. Screw you, Gonzo. You won last week, but you're not here. Sorry, buddy. All right. Thanks everybody for listening, for watching. Hopefully you're subscribing. Junior, what you got?
I'm going to say this right now. George Wolcott will be a top 3 hitter.
In 27?
27 soon, but he will be a top 3 hitter.
He'll be in the big leagues in 27 for sure. I don't know if he'll be a top 3 hitter.
Grove, Illinois. Can't wait to them to talk about every single day that he's from
Downers Grove. Wolcott and fucking Elko in the same lineup.
You know what's funny though? How crazy would it be if Elko is a top 3 hitter? Like that could be a possibility.
We gave Palka a chance. We gave Matt Davison a chance. We gotta give Elko a chance.
I mean, even all right, let's say he gets called up in the next few weeks. He rakes in the big leagues for the next year and a half. Opening day 27, he's going to be 28 years old. Like you still have 4, 5, 6 years of his prime.
We gave Jermaine Mercedes a chance.
Well, so you talked about
Jacob Amaya's in the goddamn lineup all the time. I think
Montgomery and the kid Lee are 2 guys that I can see in that 27. I like the Walco kid a lot, but I think that the big promise right now, and I'll end the show on that, is that if Elko becomes like the dark horse, like in the Kentucky Derby, the guy that comes out of nowhere, there's always players like that. The guy that figures it out late in his career. If he comes out and becomes just what he's doing right now in AAA, if he can do that at the big league level of just providing power and getting on base, okay, playing average to below average first base.
Be consistent Gavin Sheets from the right side. That's all you want. Consistent Gavin Sheets. That
would be a huge win for the Chicago White Sox. Would save them a lot of money, and I think that it would make them fix a big hole in them getting back to being competitive, because I don't see anybody. I always say that there needs to be a guy on the team that can hit the long ball. And right now, the guys on this team, there are a lot of Ozzie Guillens and Scott Fletchers on this team and Joy Coras. There's
nothing wrong with being Ozzie.
I know there's nothing wrong. You
can't have 9 of them.
But you can't have 9 of them. You need Paul Konerkos. You need guys that can produce. So, but again, looking forward to it, and I'm glad that we jumped on.
All right. So on that note, make sure to subscribe to the Guillen Grid on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter at Blackout Show CHI. Follow Jay, Gonzo, and Junior on social as well. Thank you as always for watching. We'll see you next time on the Blackout Show.